Throttle Stop Moto podcast. I am one of your hosts, Justin Bethune.
Jeff Griffith.
And Matt Welch.
Welcome to the new set.
Yeah, it's cool.
Please let us know what you think.
Yeah.
We are in a space where we can bring the bikes in
Yeah.
now
Yeah.
and sit more comfortably.
Yep.
So this is, we're going to see how this works. And if it works out well, we may start using this on a more regular basis. So how's it going, guys? It's been a little while.
It has been a minute. Christmas kind of slowed things down.
snow.
And Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, everybody.
Yeah.
Skipped a week. We did the presentation.
We did the presentation,
So that's 4 weeks right there.
Yeah,
that
which-
we really haven't been in the studio.
which is dropping today as we're recording.
Right.
Obviously, when you see this, it'll have been
We
2
have
weeks
about
ago.
2-week lag. So
That was cool.
yeah, it really was cool.
I like that format for a switch up on the podcast.
Yeah.
She did a great job on that. She was making me jealous the whole time.
I know.
was,
Cool story. And
living
neat
living my
pictures,
life,
yeah.
my best dream there.
Yeah.
So that was cool to see. She is kind of unassuming when you meet her. If you don't know that's what she does.
So, yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
she showed
yeah.
us at the shop one day and she's like, I'm going to do this. And we were like, hell yeah, you are. So, we got her headed the right direction. Her,
She'd never ridden a
and
bike
Brandon.
before.
No.
That's insane.
So,
Like, me as a grown man was scared to go on a bike that big after
Right.
riding dirt bikes.
And
my
she
whole life.
said no one said don't do this. I hope someone at least was a little bit cautious. Like, are you sure? Like, I don't
think anybody at the shop, I mean, you know how we are.
Obviously, we don't want to prevent anything like that from happening. I mean, that's awesome, but
I've told the dad not to buy their 17-year-old
Right,
the
yeah.
double R, but
yeah.
an adult can make their decisions, I guess.
yeah, but I mean, doing something like that, no, we're all for it. We're just jelly. That's all. So,
Exactly, right? Like, just send plenty of pictures.
Yeah.
Yeah, but our 1200 GS as a first bike is a big step, and she did it.
Yeah,
And she
it's
was
huge.
she went all the way to Ushuaia.
But she did it right. And I mean, we're kind of going to, I guess that's a good lead into what we're going to talk about today, because we're going to talk about MSF course and training and bikes for new riders, maybe not 1200, 1250, 1300s now for new riders. But yeah, she did all the training. She went to the BMW Performance Center and got herself as well prepared as she could to start that. So
It
yeah.
makes a huge difference just being willing to go through it. And I think that whenever we are going to give caution to a customer is whenever they're just kind of like, yeah, I want to start riding motorcycles. Sell me that Panigale V4S. I remember one day we had a customer who he went through everything, and as he's loading up the motorcycle, he said, yeah, this is my first bike.
Yeah.
And I'm like, no, like, what have we done?
I mean, we've sold customers bikes and then they go practice in the parking lot, and it's never pretty.
No.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, that's like the most common question on the internet is, should you start on a 600 or something equivalent?
Right.
That's
No.
probably the most controversial video I've ever posted.
Well, and I mean, me and Jeff talked about it over the last couple of days doing this, and what is the right first bike? And I think it's relative to your, if you've got a ton of dirt bike experience,
Yep.
before you buy, a street bike, then maybe you can step up a few hundred cc's right
Maybe.
off the rip. But
Also talk about discipline. How disciplined
Yeah.
are you as a person?
right,
And it's going to translate to how you are as a rider, because it has 200 horsepower. You don't have to use 200 horsepower. You can ride it in rain mode for the first while until you're comfortable, and then maybe switch things up.
Yeah,
But
then a bike like the BMW 1000, that's a smooth bike with a lot of nanny features on
Yeah.
it, versus like an older 1000 with nothing but ABS on it.
yeah,
Is going to be completely different for somebody that's never ridden a street bike before.
for sure,
which-
yeah.
Which is
if
what
we-
happened to me.
If we didn't have all these, all the rider aids on
Yeah.
the new bikes, we wouldn't have the new bikes, because there'd be people
It's just way too much power.
getting killed
Yeah.
left and right on them, and somebody would man them like 4-wheelers or 3-wheelers
Exactly.
or 3-wheelers. So
one thing you'll notice about some of the bikes we'll talk about today is one of my recommendations for new riders is typically to go for something that has plastic on the sides, not a metal tank. So most of the bikes that we talk about today, we're going to have some sort of cover on the side, with the exception of the Scrambler. Even this Scrambler right here has a cover right here that's replaceable, so you're not just denting a tank and having to replace the whole thing, because this is expensive, this is cheap.
relatively,
Right. I mean,
Relatively cheap.
I shouldn't say
it's still a
It's still a
Ducati.
Ducati, yeah.
But yeah, I mean that. Yeah, I hear what you're saying. Yeah, I mean that's my. We'll talk about the Triumph Scrambler, and it's such a pretty motorcycle that you drop it and bend that tank, and you almost feel like you've got to replace the tank.
yeah, but they
So-
did a good job with that bike. I should have looked at the price of that before we got on here, but it's not going to be an expensive tank because of where it's manufactured. And that's something that you don't get whenever you're looking at like a Scrambler 1200.
Yeah, don't go crash your Panigale and have to replace the fuel
Right.
tank.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's not a good day.
It'll be a difference. Like you're talking about all these smaller bikes, you're like talking about $400 or $500 for a tank rather than $1,200
For sure. Yeah, yeah.
or 24 on some
A
of the bigger
Panigale tank would with the cost of a Panigale tank or a double R tank would total
Yeah.
a Scrambler 400 or a 390 Duke or something.
So they think about these things in manufacturing. So it's good to think about your first bike that you have, you're likely going to drop. And that's my point in saying all of that. And so I always like a dual sport or something that has plastic on the side rather than something you're going to have
Something
to spend a lot of money on whenever that happens.
Well, that's where like a GS actually wouldn't be like a bad first bike
Right.
in that regard because they're made to drop. Especially you put the right guards and stuff on them. Even the most experienced riders are going to drop them.
For sure.
Yeah.
You know, and so
They
like,
do
it's-
crash well or drop well, maybe.
drop well.
Yeah.
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 It's-
I thought our
dropping
slogan
and
was ride
crashing are
well.
two different
Yeah,
things.
for sure. What's that, Jeff?
I thought our slogan was ride well.
Sometimes it's crash well.
Okay.
Yeah.
You know, you got to crash well if you're going to ride well.
I mean, that's motocross in a nutshell. You got to know how to crash, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
I've got the scars to prove I don't.
Right.
That's why I didn't last long.
But also kind of before we get too deep into it, I want to talk about 2024 just a little bit. I mean, we had a pretty good 2024. It's not our best year that we've ever had. It's our second best year we've ever had as far as number of bike sales. But we were able to reach the top dealer in the Southeast for KTM Group, which is KTM Husqvarna Gas, including all of those brands. And we beat up some pretty heavy hitters. We have some pretty strong markets in our area that are included in that, and that covers everything from Tennessee and every other state you'd think of as the Southeast. It kind of stops at Florida. Florida's in its own category, so even if we included them, we're number 1 or 2, or number 2 or 3, I should say.
Yeah, I mean the motorcycle industry definitely took a reset in 24, following up COVID, and we were only 6% off in total sales, cumulative sales with all the brands. We were 6% off. We matched what we did last year with the Pierre Group, with KTM Husqvarna Gas. Ducati, Triumph, those guys, were great to us this year. The manufacturers helped us out, cleaning up some used or some excess inventory that every dealer ended up with. So no, I mean thanks to everybody, thanks to all the guys at the shop did a great job. This stuff helps just getting our name out there, and we'll keep doing it, and next year will be even better. So yeah.
And we have some goals for 2025 going forward. I mean, we're hoping to grow the Triumph, Ducati, and BMW brands, where we have been seeing consistent growth with the Pierre Group, the KTM brands. We want to continue that, obviously, and not lose any ground, but we kind of need to change our focus a little bit so that we are able to help those brands grow as well.
Yeah, I mean, we obviously the point is to grow all the brands. We like having all the brands as partners, and we expect a lot out of them, and I want them to expect a lot out of us. So,
but we got
So what are these goals for 2025? Put them in the universe. I mean, if you're allowed to.
We're just wanting to see growth with those brands. We need to maintain what we have with Pierre, and we need to grow those brands. I think we can say it. I mean, hopefully by 10% as far as number of unit sales.
yeah.
Nice.
And we want to do it in our backyard, right? So some of the things that we're looking at is our clubs, riding group, that Pandora sponsors. We'll continue to do things like this. We're going to continue to do some training. We've got Nemo outdoor equipment now. So in this area, the dual sports and the adventure riding, camping, that kind of stuff are really big. Obviously, the dirt bike stuff, the the racing the hare scrambles, racing the motocross is big. We prove that, year over year over year. So we want to focus on doing some track days. We've not done a track day in a couple years probably.
We've done one since I've been there.
Yeah. So do some track days. We just want to share the love with some stuff
Right.
that we haven't been doing. So we want to make the dealership more of a destination than just somewhere to come buy stuff.
Yep.
So
Yeah, which it already kind of seems like it is. I mean, it's like every time I'm in there, there's somebody passing through that's came in,
right.
and there's always and it's usually a couple, which is cool.
Yeah.
And getting to talk to those people is pretty awesome. So I mean, people all over the country already know the name. They know where it's at.
And
the internet helps.
I think we do a great job, but I think you can ask Jeff or anybody else at the shop. We're never happy. I'm never happy with.
Yeah.
I always want more. I always want to be better. So yeah,
we're the same way.
Yeah. Yeah.
Constantly improving.
Right.
I mean, but it's I won't say it's a high pressure environment. It's just a highly motivated environment at Pandora's, where we're always just trying to find a way to do things better, and usually that translates to a better experience for the customer. And we're always trying to reach out for those guys, because we talked about it, where Ducati is a brand. We don't have the clientele here in Chattanooga alone to do what we want to do with Ducati, like to make it a good, profitable, I won't say high volume, but higher selling market. We can't do that with just Chattanooga. We have to reach out to some markets that are outside. And when that customer makes the travel to come down here to buy a bike from us, whether it be from, Atlanta, Nashville, wherever, we have to give them an experience that's worthwhile and make it smooth, make it easy. We don't want customers waiting around for hours to buy a bike. I mean, I've been in dealerships where that was the case, and
right.
Man, that gets you some bad reviews.
And I mean, the demographics in Chattanooga don't necessarily justify our shop and the amount of product that we have in the store all the time. And there's that fine line between like wanting all the bike sales in Knoxville, Nashville, Atlanta, and then not stepping on the other dealers' toes, because we want good relationships with other dealers. There's times when we lean on them. There's times when they lean on us. So there's that balance of operating out of your own backyard and then pulling from other markets that you need to, so that the revenue's there.
We're not going to put a billboard up in Atlanta,
right?
Like, that's not what we're after.
Yeah, and there's, a brand like Ducati. I mean, it's like comparing it to like Porsche or Lamborghini or something like that. In the car world, like there's only so many people that are going to buy that brand,
right?
Until they continue to grow, which they're doing a great job of. They just came out with the motocross bike. They've got the Scrambler. They've got cheaper options. They've got more diverse options than they had before. But still, like that's only going to grow so rapidly.
Right.
So like you're fishing in a small pond,
right? For
there,
sure. Yeah.
And everybody's kind of sharing, because that is a brand that you're going to travel for,
right?
Like,
yep.
Because unless you're in a really big city, like you're probably not going to have a dealership to where the Japanese brands are going to have multiple in each city,
yeah,
and
everywhere.
even small towns.
Yeah.
So it's you're pulling from a smaller group of people.
Yeah, I mean, major metros are gonna have, if you got a Ferrari dealership in town, you're probably gonna have a Ducati dealership in town, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have a Ferrari
No.
dealership in town, but we do have a Ducati dealership, and that's an indicate, and that kind of leads back to what I was getting at, is we do need that bigger. We need a bigger pond.
Yes.
It's not always in our backyard.
Yeah. I think Ducati's doing a good job themselves to expand that pond,
right?
Just
with
their offerings.
Yeah.
So
and all the brands
right
are. I mean, we're talking about Ducati, but every brand we've got is premium. So, it's I think 3% of the population buys motorcycles.
Yeah. So,
so
you're already in the small demographic.
Yeah. What are we getting out of that?
Yeah.
And obviously we've got to have enough to make it make sense.
Right.
And we do. And obviously we appreciate all our customers for supporting us.
Yeah. Because BMW is kind of the same way.
Right.
But they are, you're going to see more BMWs on the road.
They are a little more mainstream, but it wasn't always that way, and it took the dealer network to get it to where it is now. And Ducati's headed that direction for sure. Yeah. Triumph, same thing.
Yeah, they're killing it too.
Yeah.
So.
We wanted to talk about, like, one thing that's pushing Triumph right now is the 400 that just came out. So we wanted to look at that today and kind of compare it to what else is out there, because we have a lot of different things in our showroom. Like, if you're looking for small bore, there's hardly a better place to look. Right. And we've got the 400 Scrambler, the Speed 400, and then we have the 390 Duke and the 390 Adventure, and then you've got the G310R and the G310 GS. So we have 3 different brands on the showroom floor that have come out with something. And one thing we didn't actually talk about was, like, the Husqvarna Spark Pillin that is a 401, and the Vit Pillin that's a 401. Those all kind of fit into this category of small bore, but there's some differences, and there's going to be reasons why a customer chooses one over the other, be that what price, features, the horsepower you think is necessary. So we want to talk about a little bit of that today.
And sometimes it just comes down to looks.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, if it does, like, if it doesn't look good, it's effort to ride a motorcycle back and forth to work every day or whatever, right? I mean, you got to get geared up. You got to get a helmet on, jacket on, gloves on. It's harder than just going out in the garage and lighting your car off and driving to work. So it's got to look good, especially the first go around. I think, like, as you get more into it and educated, like, a lot of people say a GS or a GSA is not a pretty motorcycle, right? Well, you kind of learn to love it because of what it'll do. Right. Multistrada will do the same thing. It's a gorgeous motorcycle. Like, nobody ever says that's not a really pretty motorcycle, because it is. But yeah, I mean, so kind of the Triumph gets everybody's attention.
Yep.
Because
I don't think they make an ugly bike.
It's so pretty.
Yeah.
And it probably, and I've got some specs here that I'm sitting here looking at, but horsepower numbers on the Triumph, 39 horsepower at 8,000 RPM. And I say at 8,000 RPM because as we go through these, like, it's important where they make power, because when you get to, like, the KTM, it's 44 horsepower, but it's another 500 RPM higher.
Right.
And the KTM is the 390 Duke KTM is definitely more aggressive, like, all the way around. The seating position is more aggressive. The ride's more aggressive. It's harsher. And none of these are bad things. It's just what are you looking for out of the bike?
Yeah. And they're appealing to that type of rider.
Right.
Ready to race.
Yeah. I mean,
it's right there on the name.
When you key on, it says it on the dash, right? So the BMW 33 horsepower at 9,500 RPM. So less horsepower.
It's also less CCs.
A higher RPM. I think arguably the BMW is the most approachable one for, like, the like, very, very, very newest beginner, hasn't ever ridden a motorcycle. It's lowest seat height. Yep. It's the lowest horsepower. And it makes pretty good torque at a lower RPM. The Triumph makes a little better torque, like the mid-range on the Triumph's really good. The motor in the Triumph's dead smooth.
Yeah. I would argue the Triumph probably makes more power at a lower RPM than any of the others we mentioned.
Right, for sure. Yeah. But the BMW is 349 pounds wet.
Yep.
And then the Triumph's 375 pounds, the KTM's 364 pounds. So power to weight ratio is arguably, it's not even, it's not back to square, but it's closer, even though the horsepower is a little misleading on the BMW because of the weight of the bike.
And I've always compared it to, like, some other brands that we don't sell. I mean, you look at the like the CBR 300, and you've got, comparable to the to the BMW as far as power is concerned, but it weighs a lot more. So you see these like, can't always just look at horsepower numbers. You have to compare horsepower numbers and the weight to really see where you're going to be, and think about the type of engine that it has, because a single cylinder is going to perform differently than a parallel twin. And I think every one of them that we've mentioned here so far is the ones we sell have all been single cylinders. Um, and then we'll talk. Well, this one's kind of an outlier here. We'll kind of get to it at the end, but the single cylinder produces power in a very linear way. It produces power that is very throaty from the bottom. And that's one thing that a lot of these entry level bikes are missing, where it just feels dead on the bottom whenever you get a multi cylinder in it. And then it eventually builds up power once you get RPMs up.
And that's always the tough part for a new rider is if you, most of the time they're not super comfortable with clutch
Yes.
control, right?
Yeah.
And we'll talk about the MSF course, but that's, I mean, I think that's like
less
step
less
two.
torque down low, you're more likely to stall it.
Yeah. Step one at the MSF course is put your feet on the ground so you don't
Yep.
fall over. Step two is finding that the friction zone in the clutch, and kind of figuring out how to apply power at throttle at the
Yeah.
same time as the clutch is coming out, because they're not on off switches. They're not either 0 or 100.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's almost infinite in between the two, and depending on the situation that you're in, you're on if you're on dead flat ground, then it's pretty easy.
Yeah. Learning clutch control is critical.
Yeah, you stick somebody newer on the side of a hill, and now it's a whole different conversation.
Yes.
Yeah. I remember we had a test ride, not a test ride, a ride that we did one of these months, and had someone on a larger bike that was stalling at stoplights and things like that. And like, it's fine. It's something that happens with new riders. It's inevitable. But that was her primary thing that she was failing at. Once she's going, it's fine. Like you learn how to turn. If you've ever ridden a bicycle, you kind of have that. So the clutch control becomes the most critical thing in the very beginning.
Well, and I think clutch control is important.
Yeah.
10 years into riding, and you roll through a parking lot at the grocery store, and if you don't have good clutch control, like, it's going to catch up with you sooner or later.
Yeah.
So that's why training is important. And we'll talk about that a little more in a few minutes. But back to the motorcycles, I mean, the KTM is definitely the most aggressive.
Yeah.
It is the most expensive, right?
It is the most expensive.
It is the most expensive.
And what's the MSRP on the 390 Adventure?
I didn't write down 390 Adventure. I wrote the 390 Duke down.
Okay.
$5,899, $5,900 on the Duke. I think it's 62 on the Adventure, on the 390 Adventure.
So you said 59.
59. In order, and it's a little misleading because of freight and prep.
Right.
But the Scrambler, I'm sorry, the Speed, the Triumph Speed 400 is $5,200.
Yep.
It's a conversation. The BMW is $5,800. The KTM is $5,900.
So if you look at that 58, 59, it sounds like they're really, really close. Right. And that's one thing I wanted to bring up in this, is that the cool thing about BMW is that they include your freight and prep in the Monroney. So you'll see the destination fee on the Monroney, but you won't see the prep. The prep is paid in the back end. But we are paid prep from the manufacturer. So if you are at a dealer and they have freight and prep on top of a BMW price, it's not how we're supposed to do it. It's according to our dealer agreements and the way that we're supposed to advertise things. We're supposed to advertise as close to an out the door price as we can. So if you're seeing those things, they're trying to pull the wool over your eyes. So always ask to see the Monroney. It'll tell you not only how things are priced, but also the build out of the motorcycle, because you want to make sure you're getting exactly what you want. And with BMW, there's a lot of different options, not so much on the G310. Right. Like there's hardly anything that you can change.
It is what it is. Yeah. Color, that's about it.
Yeah. So, but if you're looking at something like, especially like one of the 1300 GSs right now, there are so many options, and you'll see a price anywhere from 16 to 35. I mean, you can get a price anywhere you like.
And if you go on BMW's website, they show a base price that,
yeah,
I doubt that motorcycle's ever been built, right? Because it's what I think you double R that's normally 25 grand on average, probably in any BMW dealership. I think what, $16,000 or $17,000.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't ever pay attention to those prices because they're completely irrelevant. Like, look at. I encourage people, look at I hope it's us, but if it's not us, look at the dealership's website and ask to see the Monroney on that bike.
For sure. Make sure you know what you're buying. And BMW is probably and it's good to have those options, right?
Yeah.
But it also makes it terribly confusing sometimes, and just make sure that it's apples to apples, and and you're getting the specs that you want.
And on the KTM, on that 390, you're going to see 575 on freight, and you're going to see 400 on prep. And 575 is just what they charge us.
Yeah.
And we have to pay our guys to build the bike, and we want to take our time. We don't want to make it not worth it. So we have that, and we just pass that along. We're not trying to upcharge on that at all. With Triumph, it's 625 and 249 on freight and prep.
Yep.
So add those to the MSRPs you see on the KTM and the Triumph, but with BMW, that's a close to out the door numbers you could get. You got to account for dock fees at whatever dealership you're dealing with. And then your taxes are going to depend on your state. So compare out the door numbers.
Right. Yeah.
And at the end of the day, that's the number that matters.
Well, I think at the end of the day, they're so close. Like the out the door number is so close on the 3. Buy what's comfortable.
Yeah.
Buy what you think looks good.
Yeah.
Like don't.
I mean, you're buying a toy. Like, what's a few $100 difference?
Yeah, I mean, I hear
the one you really want.
Yeah, so many people justify these with fuel economy. Or
no.
If you sit down and look,
because before you can ride it, you got to spend $1,200 on gear.
Right, but if you sit down and looked at what tires cost, it negates any fuel economy savings anyway.
Yeah, because you're not getting 40,000 miles out of tires on a bike like you are on a car.
Yeah. And maybe
I think you could come to the better. I do if you're.
Unless you're one of these guys putting a car tire on the back of your motorcycle.
Stop. That's a
you,
trend. That's a trend that made me very angry for a while.
We can tell. You're mad now.
Oh man.
It's on a track, it's okay.
Yeah, buy what makes sense to you. Buy.
That doesn't even make sense.
You'll be on a track one day, don't worry.
Yeah, you will. Yeah, I can't wait. Yeah.
Oh man.
I hope you'll ride me around in it.
Yeah.
Maybe one of those Volkswagen ones with the big handlebars. You kind of
There you go.
What are we talking about now?
Those big Volkswagen motor trikes.
That's what my dad wants.
Yeah, with the front wheel 10 feet out in front of it. And
so sorry.
So you can pull a trailer.
Where you said track, and I was confused this whole time.
Trike.
right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Old man trike.
We're in the South. Track and track is like there's a very thin line there.
You're having trouble hearing without the headphones.
Yeah,
I know. That's what it is.
Yeah.
See, he's already halfway to the trike. He
Well,
can't
I know,
hear.
yeah.
Getting old. That's what motorcycle do to you.
Yeah. But no, I mean, I think most people, I said it earlier, but I think most people that come in the dealership are drawn to the Triumph because it's so pretty, right?
Yeah.
The KTM's really, really angular, really aggressive looking. Like all the Dukes look the same. I mean, you could from 100 feet away, I don't know that you can tell the difference between a 250 Duke and a 1390 Duke.
Yeah.
Because they all got the really sharp shrouding.
Yeah, they look the same. They just get a little bigger.
I mean, they've done a really good job of making them all look the same. And then somewhere in the middle of the kind of classic look of the Triumph and the really aggressive look of the KTM is the BMW.
Yeah.
Which is very BMW to be like right down the middle, right?
Yeah. Very BMW.
Yeah.
But I love the look of the 310. I think they look great. I mean, for the price point, I mean, it looks like a much more expensive bike.
They do, and they're great bikes. Yeah. And if you don't ride one back to back with the KTM, like it's not drastic on the horsepower, on the output. On paper it is, but like your butt dyno.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things. Also, like if you're looking to buy a bike, only test ride within your price range.
Yeah.
Oh man, yes.
Because especially like when I had the Tiger 900, it was like don't ride the 1200.
Right.
Like don't because you will trade it in.
Right. Yeah.
So it's like you hear that a lot. Yeah. It's like stick within your price range.
Not only that, but like we've had situations where customers have come in and they've test tried a motorcycle and they've let it down. Like if you can't afford to buy the bike, you probably shouldn't be riding it because letting it down is always a risk.
Right.
And so, we try to have this conversation beforehand where like, hey, if you crash it, you're either going to help or you're going to pay for the repairs or you're going to pay for the bike. Like you have a choice there. So if, and I think that's fair. I mean, I don't think anybody would argue that that's not fair. we have insurance, but you don't want to pay our deductible.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, you should probably have insurance that follows you before you can test ride someone's motorcycle.
That's the expectation, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, so yeah, we just want to make sure that you're going to be able to go through with the purchase if that does come down to it. I mean, and if you're a month out from purchasing, that's no big deal. Like, we'll let you test ride, and we'll let people test ride some things just because we want to get the word out about bikes. Like, we want you to come test ride bikes. Be excited about riding the new R1300 GS and GSA that have the automatic shift assistant. We have 2 of those bikes right now. Come in and test ride them. It's just an experience that you're going to go out, you're going to tell your friends, and hopefully we'll sell some bikes at the end of the day. Test rides are important.
But if you're 6 months out, go to a ride day.
For sure.
Like at Barber.
Well, and if we're talking about new riders, I mean, obviously, we don't want to put a new rider on a 1300 GS, but no, I mean, go to do the MSF course.
Yeah.
Go do the BMW training in Spartanburg. Like,
so speaking of which, where, like, say somebody's in a position where they want to get a bike and they've never ridden before, what's the best course of action for them to do a course, learn how to ride before they actually buy a bike?
So, I mean, I think step one is Chat State for us, locally, but an MSF course, which is Motorcycle Safety Foundation.
Do they have bikes that you can?
They do. So, and they're low CC. They're really approachable. They've been dropped.
They are pre-crash
100 times. Yeah, I mean, they are used up, but that's perfect because you get to drop somebody else's stuff and not your new motorcycle that you just bought, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And then
I took my courses on this thing.
Yeah. MSF offers a advanced course. So, and I think they say do the basic course, get your license, get 1,000 miles on your bike, and come back and take the advanced course. The basic course, I'm kind of getting ahead of myself. The basic course is $315, I think, here locally. I don't know what it is nationally, but locally at Chattanooga State, it's $315. There always is a wait list. It's on Chattanooga State's website. You and like you're looking at a month and a half between when you sign up and before you can get a date, before you get in on a class.
License.
Right.
It was in Georgia.
But once you go through the basic course, you come out of it with a Tennessee motorcycle license.
You just have to take a certificate to the DMV. You get to skip all the testing and just
Because
go straight to getting
testing
your
is
picture and all that.
About useless.
Yeah.
I mean, the test they put you through proves nothing.
Right, for sure. Yeah.
What is the blood
Take off-
alcohol
you
content
didn't-
that's acceptable? Is it 0.08?
Yeah, and I mean, it is a lot of alcohol.
That's if you show
DUI
up on
questions,
Harley
isn't it? Yeah,
to
right.
take your test.
Oh, wow.
I'm allowed
I
to
got
say
this
that.
I got a breathalyzer. It lets me know when it's time to take a drink.
Could you imagine seeing a guy with one of those state installed
Yeah,
on his Harley? It won't start until he breathes into it.
It's out there, I guarantee you. Yeah, I haven't seen it, but I guarantee it's
I'm
out
surprised we haven't seen one at a bike night.
Goodness.
So I think it's 5 hours of online training before the classes. It's a 2-day class. I think 10 hours total ride time. All the bikes are I don't know, they're like Rebel 250s. Some of them use the 310 GS that we're talking about.
And BMW has like a lot just as you're rattling it off, but it's good training. Like it'll actually get you equipped to do
10
it.
hours to a new rider. Like they're always done. I mean, we hear it all the time when they come in, especially when they've done it in the summer, because you're in the middle of a parking lot, full exposure in the sun, black pavement, and you're not going anywhere. You're going 10 mile an hour at the most. But yeah, I mean, they're going to go over things like clutch control, avoidance techniques, threshold braking, the stuff that we should all practice on a regular basis that we really don't, but we should.
To the cruiser guys actually using the front brake.
Front brakes are important. Yeah. and they do that. I mean, I think they, I don't know if those bikes have got ABS,
I doubt it.
but they do an exercise where, you use rear brake only. You get on the brakes at a cone running 15 miles an hour or whatever, and you get on the rear brakes only, and they put another cone up or somehow mark where the bike stops, and then you do it again on the front brake, and it just
It
It
demonstrates
just
it.
proves the point that front brakes are a lot better, a
Yeah.
lot more effective than rear
We
brakes.
can argue about something, but until we show it, you know,
Right,
we
yeah.
could still have that argument.
Well, it's usually when you have more brake on the front.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
The expectation is you use it
On
more.
a lot of bikes, there's
Two,
two.
and they're gargantuous now. They're huge. Yeah.
But speaking of that, you were talking about BMW before we started doing this. BMW does repay some of that.
BMW does repay some of that. So they will cover up to, I think, 350. They'll reimburse up to $350 of your MSF course, and then they will, I think it's $500 towards
gear.
gear when you purchase a new motorcycle.
And that's awesome because as you're buying a new bike, you're going to need some gear.
And I guess that's important when you purchase a new BMW motorcycle, right? You
Right, yeah,
can't roll in the BMW dealership with your MSF
Yeah.
completion certificate and be like, I want my reimbursement in my gear, please.
But that
So-
takes that bike that was already the least expensive in the market and just plunges it down even further. Because if you add all that up, you're paying $5,000 close to out the door
Yeah.
for a bike.
Right.
That's insane. Like that's a really,
And I mean,
really good deal.
If you buy good gear, what you're going to spend at least $1,000 if you
Yeah.
buy good gear.
Oh yeah,
Like
at least.
the gear you should be buying.
And that's a cost that everyone who's getting into motorcycling should think of before they get into it. Like it's not, especially if you're going to do like off-road stuff, it's not a cheap sport to get into.
No, it's not.
But you know, you can make it affordable by buying these bikes, but it gets more expensive as you get more expensive bikes.
And the gear's a whole lot cheaper than the copay at the hospital.
Yeah.
A whole lot cheaper.
But the gear's it's the same gear regardless of whether you're on a $5,000 bike or a $30,000 bike.
For sure. I mean, yeah, and that's a good point. Is if you're buying a lower CC bike and you feel like you're going to outgrow it in 6 months, you trade it in. You get something like the Scrambler or something bigger CC. You can wear the same gear.
Yep.
And I'll
Not
tell
you
you,
gotta
like a
throw it
lot of
away
people
and start over.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was getting. A lot of people like they'll buy an entry level bike and they want to buy $100 jacket, $100 helmet. Like I wouldn't be caught dead in $100 jacket and $100 helmet.
You
unless
might.
they
That's
actually-
kind of the point.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. You would be caught.
But it's more than just the protective aspect. It's also how comfortable are you while wearing it? Is it even like so uncomfortable and
Yeah.
so cheap that it's a distraction while you're riding?
Or you're just not going to wear it.
And I've worn gear like that. That is a distraction. And
Yeah.
you're not going to
You-
wear
You're
it.
not going to wear it. You're like, oh, it's hot today. This jacket is not vented enough because it's cheap.
Yeah.
And you're not going to wear it.
I rode over here today, and all I had at the store was a vented jacket.
I know you were wearing the same climb jacket that I
Did-
have, and I saw you. I was like,
Today
oh man, I
is
know
a-
you were cold.
Today is a really good example of how well it is vented.
That hoodie doesn't do a whole
No,
lot, does
no,
it?
it didn't. Not at all. Luckily, it's not too far over here.
Yeah.
He had not planned on riding
I had
today.
not planned on riding over here today, so yeah,
Sorry, Jeff and I had a phone call. At
I
like
was
10:30
wide
last
awake when
night.
I got here. No coffee needed. So
There you
yeah,
go.
Yeah. But yeah, so invest in gear while you're doing it. BMW makes that a lot easier.
Yeah. And the you talked about the gear being a distraction. I tell people all the time. You've heard me say it is riding the motorcycle should not use up your bandwidth.
Yeah.
Like you should have some ability in storage to dodge the car or fix the gravel that you just ran over mid corner or whatever. If all of your concentration, all of your bandwidth is used up just operating the clutch or the throttle or the brakes or whatever, then you're going to be in trouble. And that's why training and practice and riding around your neighborhood or riding in parking lots or whatever, like phone a friend, get them to come get your motorcycle and take it to a parking lot on a Sunday when they're closed and just practice.
Yeah. It should
Don't-
become muscle memory, second nature.
Yeah.
And I've argued before, like I am way more aware of my surroundings when I'm on a motorcycle than I am when I'm in a car.
Right.
Just because there's no crumple zone there, and so your gear that you get becomes that crumple zone. So it's important that it's going to be able to protect you. But thinking about the BMW, it is the least expensive on there, especially if you're taking advantage of the MSF stuff. It's also it's also going to be the least featured out of all of them.
Right.
Talking about the GS, it's still a very off-road capable bike because it's a light bike. It has a 19-inch front, 18-inch rear. So they're big enough to get over obstacles. It's still a cast wheel. The suspension's not adjustable, but it's a good, smooth bike that's inexpensive to get into, and it's a quality bike that's backed with BMW's warranty.
Right.
And then it doesn't have ride modes. So going from that, when you pay more for the Triumph or the KTM, there's some of that stuff that you get. Whenever you're talking about with the Triumph, if we want to move over to that conversation, you get into, you have an off-road mode that lets you turn off ABS or go to an off-road mode on ABS and turn off traction control, so you can actually spin the tire a little bit and actually get out there and ride off-road. So you're getting a little bit more into the fun you want to have rather than just transportation on the road.
Right. Yeah. I think you can turn ABS off.
Okay.
On the GS.
I wasn't 100% on that.
I think we'll double down on that and maybe put it in the comments or something. But it is important to be able to turn the ABS off on these bikes riding off road. And if you ever go to any off road school where there's street bikes involved, not dirt bikes, but street bikes involved, you're most likely going to do an ABS drill.
Yeah.
And with ABS on, you pile up on the brakes and gravel, and it does exactly what it's supposed to, which is not lock up the tire, and the thing it'll go forever. You won't think it's ever going to stop.
End up in a ravine.
Right. Yeah. You might as well just use all the rear brake because that's it feels like it speeds up as soon as you get on the brakes.
Yeah.
But then you turn the ABS off, especially, rear ABS off completely and limited ABS on the front so it doesn't like tuck the front wheel on you.
I like to do.
And that's what we're talking about when we say an off-road mode on ABS.
Right. Yeah. I even like the big bikes, I don't think you can turn ABS off completely anymore. I think
you can on the KTM stuff.
Can you? Yeah.
There's some you can, some you can't.
Yeah, I think the BMW.
And if you can, it's not easy.
Right. Yeah.
You gotta do a rain dance.
Effort, yeah.
Press 4 different buttons.
But yeah, I mean, the BMW is great off road. When they first came out, I built one because I kept hearing everybody talking about it's not enough, it's not big enough, it's too small, it doesn't have enough horsepower. It's great. It's awesome. And then when you get in the woods, you can fly on the thing.
Yeah.
And it just gets better arguably with the KTM off road.
Yeah.
Because you got the ride modes, you got a little better suspension. It's adjustable.
And that's what I want to bring up. The KTM is the first one you get into that has a quality screen, a nice large TFT screen. And that screen lets you have menus that get you in ABS settings, and it lets you get into different ride modes rather than just having an off-road and a road.
Right.
So you actually have a street and an off-road, and you also have a setting for as far as like fueling street and off-road. You also have a setting for your Bluetooth connectivity. So, all of our BMW guys who are on the GSs and everything, they all have a headset. So KTM is trying to get the entry-level riders with a headset to have that communicator and be able to see who's calling them, decide whether or not to reject it. I'm not telling everybody to be plugged in while you're riding, but if you see the same phone call repeatedly from your wife, she's probably worried, so you need to answer the phone.
Yeah.
But anyway, it's kind of, you got some of those nicer features, and you were talking about the adjustability on suspension, and that translates pretty well off-road. You can look at our last episode with Rob where we kind of talked about all that. Having that adjustability makes a difference when you get out in the dirt.
And I think on the KTM you've got rebound and compression on the front.
Yep.
What's it got on the rear? I can't remember.
I don't think it has any adjustment on the rear.
Preload only?
Preload, yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So no preload on the front, rebound and compression on the front though.
Right.
And then preload only on the rear.
Yep.
Yeah.
And that helps it actually is one of the first bikes too that you can pack on a little bit and actually add some luggage to. You could do that on the GS, absolutely. But the suspension is a little bit higher quality on the KTM, so you're able to load up a little bit more.
Yeah.
And that, that's another thing to think about. What are you going to be doing with the bike? Are you buying this bike to learn to ride and then travel on, or go camping on whatever, or are you just going to buy the bike and ride it and have fun?
Right. Yeah.
And I would say if you're going to just buy the bike, ride it, have fun, I'd point you toward the Scrambler because it looks good. It's a fun bike to ride, and it doesn't have all the luggage options. Like it has like a side bag you can get and things like that. It has a lot of protective gear that's available for it, for like the headlight, skid plate, crash bars. So that's one thing I've been really impressed with that bike is just the quality of build and the quality of components that are available for that bike
For
initially.
the price.
For the price too,
I agree, 100%. It's a beautiful motorcycle. The fit and finish is great. The paint's really good. My only gripe, and it started way back on the 1200 Scramblers, is if you throw that thing away off road, which you're going to sooner or later, the metal tank.
Right.
And I get the metal tank kind of makes those bikes what they are.
Right.
Yeah, it's the look.
Yeah, but at the same time, if you're gonna ride it off road, that tank's gonna get bent sooner or later. And for me, I would have to replace the tank because the thing's so pretty.
Yeah.
I could put up with skint panels on the GS or replace the panels, and it's much cheaper than the tank, even though that tank's not terribly expensive, relative to the cost of tanks in general. But it's so pretty that
it's
I don't
pain to change out, and if you got to pay somebody to do it, it's a lot more labor than just a plastic panel with a few screws.
And it's good off road. I mean, I've ridden the 1200 Scrambler off road quite a bit, and the 400 a little bit now, and it does a great job.
We know another Matt who did the Sandblast Rally with that 1200, and he did really well on it. And they did, whenever it was first being developed, it was entered into the Baja 1000.
Right.
And I think they ended up with a third, which I think they ended up podiuming as soon as they produced
like a manufacturer's I don't remember what the class was, but that was Nick and wasn't it the two stunt riders?
I don't know.
I think it was the two Triumph's factory stunt riders that took those bikes to and raced them in Baja.
Obviously skilled riders, but to take something that's
all
that
heavy are skilled. I mean, you're racing through the desert at 100 miles an hour. Yeah.
But back to the 400, full disclosure, every single one of the bikes that we've talked about is built in India.
Right.
BMW is built by TVS, and the KTM and the Triumph are both built in the same factory by Bajaj or Bajaj. I can never figure out how to pronounce it. So you see the same quality of build between the Triumph and the KTM, and you see high quality of build with the BMW as well. But I'm really impressed with the Triumph's fit and finish for sure. And it is the best looking of the three. If you're just looking for the visual, and it's less of an adventure bike, right? Like it doesn't look like an adventure bike. It doesn't have that look, but it's still capable of the same things.
It's plenty capable. Yeah.
From a riding perspective.
Well, any bike is an adventure bike if you're brave enough.
That's right. Yeah.
I mean, the whole thing is bringing inappropriate equipment out and riding in the dirt.
Yeah. I mean, there's people traveling around the world on 50cc scooters. I mean, you can do it. It's just, what tool do you want to take to the job site, right?
Yeah. And if you're a beginner and it's going to be your only bike, you're going to be on the street most of the time.
Yeah.
Like even to do some adventure riding, you're going to ride there.
Right.
You're not going to load it up on a trailer and take it there.
Yeah.
Like, so the majority of your riding is going to be on the street.
And you're probably going to start with the gravel roads at Prentice Cooper and then, go to start hitting some of the back trails the second time you're out. I mean, definitely take it easy. Don't start and just, hammer up Taylor's Ridge. But
and I would argue that the Adventures and the Scramblers and like the GS are great second bikes for people that want to go ride off road.
Yeah.
Because we have a lot of people that buy GSAs, they've watched Ewan McGregor and Charlie, whatever his name, long way up, long way around, long way everywhere. And, they're going to go around the world.
Well, that's probably how Catherine ended up.
Yeah, I don't know.
Same bike.
I don't know. I don't know if that was Charlie's
She didn't
fault
mention
or not.
that.
Yeah. But I think it was Brandon's fault.
Yeah.
But we sell those bikes to these guys, and they come back, later, and they're like, man, it's a lot of motorcycle.
It's a lot of motorcycle off road, and it's like, yeah.
And if that's the first step, it is a lot of motorcycle off road. So I would argue that maybe the first step, even if it's not your first bike, the first step to getting into off-road riding, own street legal motorcycles. If you're not going to go the dual sport, the 500cc route, then go with a 310, 390, 400, and kind of learn,
Well, that's where I'm at.
what
Because like
400 pounds feels like off-road in a smaller package before you have to figure out what 600
I got the
pounds.
multi-strata rally.
Yeah.
You're
It's like
right.
it's too much off-road. And so like here locally, like I said, going to like Prentice Cooper and Taylor's Ridge and stuff like that, I'm not taking that bike up there.
Right.
And I had a dual sport and converted it to a super
I mean,
moto.
it can handle it.
So like now I want the 390.
Right.
Like I want something that's lighter weight.
Yeah.
To where, because if I'm riding off road like that, I'm going to be by myself.
Well,
I'm not going to have a passion.
no matter what you have, if you're going to ride it off road, you have to be willing to crash it.
Exactly. I'm not willing to crash the
Right.
Ducati. So,
I mean, so consider the cost of repairs, and that's why we have customers who have the larger bikes that they ride on the street, and they'll buy this as a second bike to ride off road.
Right.
And we are talking about Susan before that. She has a GS or GSA?
She had a GSA. She had the 390.
She has a 390 Adventure now,
and the RT now,
and an RT. So she has her street going bike. She had a GSA,
Yep.
but she split that into an RT and the 390.
Right.
And I encourage people who have like larger bikes that they want to ride all the time, your multi-strata, if you wanted to get into off-road riding and you haven't got any experience off-road, start with something small and cheap.
Right.
Yep.
And build your way up. Like you don't have to start with a 1290 Super Adventure R, which if I was going for that big displacement category, that's the off-road bike to have. You can ride it like a dirt bike,
Right.
but you start with these smaller bikes and you're going to be a lot more realistic about what you can do, and you're going to let it down. You're going to crash it, and it's a lot cheaper to repair that bike.
yeah. And you want something that like for me, I don't have a ton of time to ride. So like when I do have time to ride, it's like an hour here, a couple hours there. And so it's like, I don't want to spend all day loading up a dirt bike onto a trailer in the back of the truck and then driving somewhere to ride. So it's a lot nicer when you can just hop on something that's relatively the same size, just a little bit heavier, and ride to the trail, ride around for an hour. And then
how far are you riding to the trail is always a question that I ask whenever someone's considering a dual sport of any variety. And you may be a person that I'm going to recommend like an ES350 gas to, or maybe a 701, or maybe, you kind of go through all of
5 miles
these
from the trail.
Yeah.
Like, get something that's a little more hardcore.
Right.
Yeah, just buy a full-on dirt bike.
All you're doing is connecting the trails.
Yep.
If you wanted the best tool for that specific job, you're going to buy a dirt bike. But you're wanting something that's a little more versatile. And that's one thing that I think has been so attractive about adventure bikes, in the last 5 years, is that they are the Swiss Army knife. They can do everything, especially the GS and GSA. They're the Swiss Army knife of motorcycles. They're not the fastest thing out there.
No, they don't do anything the best, but they do a lot
Everything
of stuff
well.
pretty dang good.
Yeah. I mean, and they're
the
premium
overlanding
bike.
vehicles.
You're going to pay for them,
motorcycles.
but you pay for it because it's versatile.
Right.
And sometimes it'll replace 2 or 3 bikes.
Yeah,
It
depending
will.
on the guy.
Yeah. No, they're great bikes. The little bikes are a ton of fun, and there's something to be said about going out and using up a small bike. Like an RC 390, the full fairing sport bike version of the KTM 390. It's a lot of fun, like a track day bike.
Yeah, just get out there and just ring it out, ride it to the limit.
Right, because you can't really go ride. Most people, I can't go ride a Panigale, a double R to its limits. Like we
And
can't
most
use
people
those.
Can't ride a 600 to its
Right,
limits.
you can't use those bikes up, but there's a lot of people that can use up a 390, and it's a lot of fun to do.
Yeah. Well, it's like these type of bikes.
Right.
I mean, even on the street, like you're not going to go to jail riding it at the limit.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
like, where on a sport bike, you're first gear, you're breaking
you
the law.
break all kinds of laws in first gear. Yeah.
And obviously, we all like these different bikes for different reasons. If I'm going off road, and that's my focus, and that's why I'm buying the bike, I'm going 390 Adventure all day. It has the most suspension travel. It has it's the tallest seat height. So if you're challenged in that area, that's probably not the best choice. Even if you're going off road, I might go for the GS in that case. But it's got the adjustable suspension, more travel, more ground clearance, and it's got spoke wheels. which is an underrated feature on that. It definitely gives you a little more cushion off road, and they're less likely to bend that way. So that's if people who are new to this don't know that your typical cast wheels, you hit something that's hard edged, you're more likely to have a bend, and usually it's not a big deal. I mean, you can still ride it. Well, yeah, if you're getting real extreme,
Yeah.
it can crack. It's usually not a big deal though. You can usually ride a bike with a bent rim. It's just once it gets so bad, you're going to stop holding air.
And I would agree that in the past that was a pretty big
Right.
issue. Like I said, I've beaten a GS
Yeah.
and on cast wheels through the woods. And is a spoke wheel better? Is it more forgiving?
Yeah.
Absolutely. It always will be. But the new cast wheel, like, don't let it stop you from buying.
Well, also on a
bike with
lighter,
cast wheels on
on
it.
a lighter bike,
Yeah,
it's not gonna be as bad.
right. Yeah.
Yeah, cast is just not the ideal scenario. So if I'm going for, no expense spared, obviously we're talking about small bore here, so it's not going to be too expensive, even if it is no expense spared. But I'm going to go for the KTM for off-road setting. Now, if you're height challenged and that's going to be an issue for you, go for the G310 GS. Absolutely going to be an awesome off-road option for you. And of course, the cost. I mean, the price difference is, we talked about it. If you're doing the MSF course, you're getting close to the $5,000 price point. Where if you're on the KTM, you're already at 59 MSRP. You're going to end up at $7,000 price point by the time you're said and done.
Right.
So that spread does become pretty significant. So it's definitely a valid option. Either one, depending on what your focus is.
And I don't want to be confusing. Is the 310 GS, is the seat height lower than
Yes.
like the KTM? I know
Yeah.
I know it is in the R versus the Duke, and
Yeah.
I think we keep bouncing back and forth. So yeah, if you got any questions,
Well, I've been focused on the adventure side of it. You've been talking about the street side, so it's kind of, we do get a little confusing with the if I'm going street though, that Triumph all the way, like whether you're talking about the Speed 400 or you're talking about the Scrambler 400X. If I'm going to do some light off road, gravel roads, things like that, the Scrambler 400X can handle all of that. It doesn't have the adjustable suspension, which I really want. I'm a heavier rider, so it matters a little more to me. But because they don't set it up for my weight ever, even springs. But
it's fine for me when you're light and fast.
yeah. Light and fast, yeah.
Easy.
You got one of those. You got one of those. But if you're doing gravel roads and stuff, it'll handle all that. You can still go out adventure riding with your friends. It's just not something that you're going to be carrying the amount of speed you can on a 390 adventure.
Right. Yeah.
Well, I think really when it comes down to it, out of all those options, you can't really go wrong.
Mm-mm.
And with the price being so similar, just go with the one you like.
Yeah, you buy the one that you're going to jump
Yeah.
on and ride and have
Like,
fun and enjoy. That's
the-
that's the thing. That's
The nuances are like so close that it doesn't really matter. Like you're going to be happy with any of those bikes.
And if you're truly a beginner, I would argue that you're not going to know the differences anyway, even if you did go on
100%.
back to back. So, maybe, in a year, you can tell the difference after a year riding.
Yep.
You can tell all the differences in these bikes. And, we're sitting here rattling off specs, which a lot of people do. But at the end of the day, like a lot of times it doesn't matter. Buy what you like to
Yeah.
look at. Buy what you're going to.
At the end of the day, it's a motorcycle.
Right.
It's fun.
Yeah.
Regardless.
Right.
I've never ridden a motorcycle that I didn't enjoy.
For sure. Yeah. Yeah. We never have anybody come back and after riding something, they may say one's better than the other in their opinion, but nobody ever comes back and
Nobody's ever like, I hated that.
yeah, that was terrible. Don't ever.
And I've
say
even
all
ridden
that to me
Harleys.
again. Right.
So, I mean, it's still a motorcycle at
Yeah.
the end of the day.
Yeah.
You're out there, you're having fun,
Right.
Going fast, looking cool.
Yeah.
That's what it's all about.
Yeah.
I mean, it's you can't go wrong. And all the manufacturers have come so far now. It's like you can't buy like a bad bike
Yeah. They're
from
all
the name,
great.
you know,
Yeah.
the top brands. Like you're not gonna get a bad bike, and so like, don't worry so much about
Right.
it.
Yeah.
Quit comparing specs so much.
Oh
Yeah.
man, and people always are like, that bike's going to break down. That bike's high maintenance. Like all of them, everything breaks, but all of them are pretty good. There's not a bike that's out on the market right now that is just you're going to buy it and you're going to have to spend $1,000 of repair on.
Is there a bike that you can go buy brand new that doesn't have a warranty? Exactly.
Not a street bike.
Not a
that I
street
know
bike,
of.
yeah.
Dirt
So it's
bikes,
like-
yes, absolutely,
yeah.
but not a street bike. No.
Yeah, people
Yeah.
are racing.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, as far as street legal bikes, like they give a warranty for a reason.
Right.
Yeah.
Like they expect them to last for a while.
Yeah.
So you're
Yeah.
gonna be good either way. So just go out and have fun.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah,
That's really what it
it's
comes down
about.
to.
Nobody needs anything at
Yeah.
at our dealership. Like,
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, we don't need
there's
it.
nothing
It's all
in
for
there
fun.
that
Yeah.
is a necessity. So
That being said, I mean, you got to consider maintenance, and most of these you're going to be doing oil changes around every 5,000 miles. Once you get to some bigger items, you're stretching those to 7,500 or 9,000 miles. I know the BMW, like the big boxer engines, are 6,000 miles. So, I mean, consider maintenance in what you're looking at. It's not that any of them are super high maintenance, though, and that's one thing that is a little bit of a misnomer, especially when you're talking about Ducati. We haven't talked about Ducati at all yet,
Right.
but it's maintenance is just a reality of it. And it's not just oil changes, it's not just valve adjustments, it's checking over everything, and tires. What are you going to wear out tires more on?
Right.
What tire selection do you have? And what I've discovered is that people don't worry about that as much because they cite it whenever they're buying a bike. Like, yeah, that one's going to be higher maintenance than this bike. But whenever they cut down to it, they're putting, pretty off-road oriented tires on some of these bikes. And I'm like, well, that's going to wear out quicker. Oh, yeah, I know. Like, it's not as big of a deal when it comes to that.
Right.
Again, it's a toy. People don't mind spending money on their toy.
Well, but as a new rider, I think it's an important point. I mean, you think about your car and you ride it goes down the road at say 2 to 2,500 RPM, right? So spark plugs are firing every 2,500 RPM or every yeah. So and then you take a motorcycle and it's rolling down the road at like peak horsepower was at 9,500 RPM. It's not going down. You're not rolling down the road at 9,500 RPM,
No,
but
you
you
are
are
5,000 or 6,000.
yeah, you're
So,
double what you are in a car.
Yeah.
So, and you're, it might have a quart and a half oil in it, and the bikes that we're talking about.
Yeah.
So, yeah, the maintenance is going to be more than maybe what your expectation is if you're basing it on what you've dealt with on your cars. The spark plugs are firing at twice.
But 5,000 miles to an oil change interval is not harsh.
No.
Like, that's pretty much where a lot of cars are now.
Right, yeah.
Most cars are trying to push toward that $10,000 mile mark. But you actually see that a lot with the Triumph stuff too. A lot of the Triumphs, even some of the smaller bore stuff, are pushing to 10,000 miles. Not in the case of this 400, but if you're looking at like the 660s and up, they're really pushing those maintenance intervals out. And I would argue if you're doing some off-road, you probably need to, take that into account whenever you're looking at this and not go the full 10,000.
Well, and I mean, those engineers are a lot at Triumph and any of the brands are a lot smarter than I am, but I would argue that you should not be going 10,000 miles on, 2.5 quarts of oil
Yeah.
with a filter that's, 3-inch in diameter.
Yeah, and I don't worry about the oil itself. I know that the oil itself doesn't break down. It's about the particulates that get in it and whether or not the oil filter can handle that. And also, you talk about like normally people are going to be doing annual maintenance rather than mileage based maintenance.
And that's kind of the saving grace on these things.
Yeah.
Most people aren't putting 10,000 miles on them a year. So
Yeah.
they're getting oil changes at 3,000 miles,
Which
5,000
Ducati
miles.
says every 2 years. Most of our brands say annually. And that's because as you change temperature, especially if you're keeping it in a garage that's not temperature controlled, you're eventually going to get some condensation in there. And it's the oil filter we're worried about, not the engine. It's not all the oil that's elsewhere in the engine.
Yeah, in most cases, any condensation that happens inside the engine from ambient temperature swings is going to get burned off as soon as the engine gets up to temperature.
Right.
That's why it's important. Like now, when it's winter, when it's cold outside, people say, "Well, I backed it out of the garage and started it and let it run for a couple minutes." No, it needs to like get up to full temperature, or you just need to leave it alone and change the oil in the spring if you're not going to ride it. Keep the battery hot. Don't start it.
Yeah, most people aren't going to do the proper maintenance before they put it up for the winter,
Right.
and so most people end up doing that spring maintenance anyway. So it's a good time to just do it all.
That oil filter is paper, and we all know what happens when moisture hits paper.
Yeah.
As long as oil flowing through there, it's not a problem. We wanted to mention this.
Yeah, so we're about out of time, but maybe step 2 or maybe like if you've got a lot of experience on a dirt bike, then something like the Scrambler behind us is a great bike. It's bigger proportionally, generally speaking. It's bigger proportionally than all the bikes that we've been talking about.
More comfortable for a bigger rider like me.
Right. More. Yeah. Yeah. It's normally sprung a little heavier. Has a little more horsepower. It's, sometimes new riders are all about the sound. Like it's just another option that's not a bad option. We sell not necessarily that urban motard, but the Icon to a lot of first time riders because it is the lowest seat height, and they're pretty narrow in like a full size motorcycle. And I hate to say that like a 390 Duke is not a full size motorcycle, but it's what, 7/8 scale kind of, like it's not quite there, but that's a great option.
And they have different options within it too. So you have like, this is the urban motard, it's got 17s front and rear. If I'm doing off-road, I don't want that, right? If I'm riding on the street, I really like it because it turns a little bit easier. It's it just feels better on the street. It's going to corner better. If you want that Scrambler look but not the off-road capability of most of the Scramblers, get this. Like it's going to be a better handling bike,
and it looks sick.
It does, and like that's kind of why I wanted to bring it over here and get it in the shot today. But it looks really good. But then most of those bikes, we can get payments of like $200 a month.
Yeah. I mean, like
so on the Ducati Scrambler line.
In closing on that, like the point that I want to like kind of make is, guys closer to our age compared to new riders now, how lucky are they with their options for beginner bikes?
Oh yeah.
I did, like when we were kids, or 17, 18, 19 years old, if you wanted a beginner bike, you were on an ugly XR, some kind of weird dual sport, or a Ninja 250, which is the ugliest bike in history.
Not even a Ninja. I had a GZ 250. That thing was like dinky.
We had no cool beginner bikes. And I think that goes back a lot to safety, because when we were teenagers, it's like, I want the 600 because nobody makes a cool looking entry level sport
And
bike.
everything now has ABS.
Yeah.
Like I had to learn the hard way. Like having ABS is something that we're going to take for granted going into the future because everything's got it now.
Yeah. So along, Justin, what you just said, I think it's important. Like back then, you didn't have any options.
Yeah,
now you've got tons of options.
You were a beginner.
Yeah. Yeah. And
now you ride down the road as a brand new rider on some of these cool looking bikes.
And the paper plate on the back of the 250 was so
so it's like you can ride a really cool looking bike now.
Yeah. But there's so many options that I think sometimes it gets overwhelming.
Yeah.
And then I think for somebody who's not comfortable in this arena, it's overwhelming, and sometimes they're hesitant to come in a dealership.
Yeah.
And
which is the best place they could actually be.
For sure.
Because most people that want a new bike that they've never ridden before, they're watching videos like this all day long.
Yeah. Come ask us questions. Like don't be afraid to come in. Go, go and see the guys next door at Southern. There's a ton of information over there. Don't be hesitant to walk in a motorcycle shop and ask questions. If they laugh at you, if you don't feel welcome, you're in the wrong motorcycle shop.
And it's not like buying a car
to ask questions at,
where like you go to a dealership and the majority of the guys there are just there to sell you a car.
Right.
They probably don't even ride or drive the car that they're selling you.
Yeah.
Especially if you go into like a higher end
something premium.
Yeah, they can't even afford the cars that they're selling. But you go into a motorcycle dealership, especially like you guys, y'all are all enthusiasts.
Right.
And like you're there to make sure, and this is something that can get somebody hurt. So y'all want to make sure that people are doing it the right way. So you're going to lead them in the right direction. You're going to give them the right information, and you are actually living this thing that they're wanting to learn.
And we want them to buy motorcycles like
forever. Yeah, you don't want them to get out
motorcycles down the road.
Well, that's the thing. Like I always tell parents, especially on the dirt bike side, like don't get your kid on something they're going to be afraid of because they're going to stop riding. Yeah. I don't want to do that with a customer on a street bike either. And I see like we have a pretty good crew at the sales department right now that really takes their job seriously and looks at they're not going to try to hard sell you. They're not going to try to be the high pressure salesman. And if they are, let us know. But I definitely trust them not to be that guy. Our job primarily is to educate the customer and make sure that they make the right decision for them. That's not our decision. That's your decision. But we have to give you the information you need to make that decision.
We are a pretty opinionated bunch. I'll say that.
Absolutely.
But it's always in people's best interest, right? Or like we're trying to look out for their best interest.
Yeah,
so
definitely.
yeah, come see us.
Yep, go see them as just a representative of the show, not affiliated with the store as a customer originally. I can say that all of that is true. And that's why I've always recommended people to you guys. And like I said, if you're wanting to learn more and you haven't ridden before, go to a dealership.
And real
talk
quick,
to the people.
you're not wasting our time.
No,
This is what we do. Now, if you sit there and you're talking, and we're not talking about motorcycles for an hour, that's wasting our time. But you're not wasting our time if we're talking about motorcycles.
So awesome. All right, guys. Well, maybe on the next show we can cover the new Ducati dirt bike that everybody's talking about.
Yeah, and the trailer and the hauler.
Yes, y'all have one?
No, I'm talking about
Is that our product?
the hauler is amazing.
Oh,
the transporter, the
tractor
tractor trailer.
right.
Yeah, the
I've seen
race
some of the videos.
race team's
So when
hauler.
are y'all going to get, real quick before we go?
July is first availability on those, and those are the ones that are going to be pre-ordered. Get on their website. They have like a little place where you can put your information in and kind of put your name in it. So like we as a dealer know to give you a call as soon as we
Are
can
y'all gonna be
pre-order.
having one come in.
We got deposits on 2 of them now.
And I'm sorry, I
We'll
said
do
July.
some-
It's
we'll
gonna
do
be
some
more July,
videos.
August, but anyway.
We'll do some videos when those come in because that's going to be a big deal.
It is.
We'll bring one and set it.
Yep,
right there.
definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll do like we'll set it in front and do a
Yeah.
full review. We don't care.
Yeah. Make
Awesome.
it front center.
All right, guys. Well, thanks for joining us again. We'll see you on the next one for the Throttle Stop Moto podcast. I'm Justin.
Jeff.
Matt,
See you.
thanks.